Welcome to the Published Author Podcast, where we help entrepreneurs learn how to write a book and leverage it to grow their business and make an impact. I'm your host, Josh Steimle. Today, my guest is Mareo McCracken. Mareo is the Chief Revenue Officer at Move Medical, where he guides sales, marketing, and customer success efforts. Prior to that, he was the top performing salesperson at multiple companies in various industries, including financial services, marketing, logistics, manufacturing, and commodities. And now he's the new author of the book, Really Care for Them: How Everyone Can Use the Power of Caring to Earn Trust, Grow Sales, and Increase Income, no matter what you sell or who you sell it to. Mareo, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Good job with that super extra long title.
That is a little bit of a long, I was reading it and I was like, wait, no, I've read this before, but it's got to be over. Nope, it's not over. Okay.
Super long.
Well, hey, Mareo, for those listening, Mareo and I go back a ways. We've been connected on LinkedIn and through mutual friends and such for a long time. We were just chatting. We both lived in Hong Kong, actually, and his wife's from Brazil, and I used to live in Brazil. So we were having a great chat before the show here. Yeah. But I'm excited to bring Mareo on the show because he is a brand new author. He just launched his book. When did it go live, Mareo?
October 26th.
Okay. So yeah, we're recording this December 7th. So literally his book just came out. And so this is all a fresh experience for him. And he's here to tell us about his journey and what he's gone through and some of the things he's learned at this point. For those of you listening to this who are still on the other side of saying, hey, I might want to write a book. I think I want to write a book, but where do I start? All that stuff, Mareo just went through that. And so we're going to chat with him about that. But first, Mareo, give us a little bit more background on your professional side, your career, where you come from, and how you got to where you are today.
For sure. Yeah. So ever since I left college, I've been in some type of sales or business development type role. So I started off doing sales face-to-face to small business owners. And then I moved into more kind of big commodity type sales, then went into more B2B where I was selling to distributors and distribution networks. And then I went into financial services, then back to large B2B. So I've been in lots of different kinds of sales, from manufacturing to software. So I've had a little bit of experience in a lot of different areas. And now I'm working with a medtech SaaS company, and it's pretty exciting.
And you're the Chief Revenue Officer. So tell us a little bit more about what that entails at this company.
So because we're a small company, we're only about 50 people. How we've combined the business is sales and marketing report up through the same line. Instead of having a CMO and then a VP of sales, which lots of companies have, the CRO role kind of combines both sales and marketing under one umbrella so they can be aligned better, more agile. And then in our company, customer success also kind of goes through that same channel because it's the more advanced account management on the tech side of things. So that's kind of how our company is set up.
So sales, marketing, customer support, it's all on your shoulders.
Well, I have a good team. Yeah.
You're the guy. So at what point did you say, I mean, you've got a successful career, you're doing well, if you're good at sales, you can always get a job, right? So what made you feel like I need to write a book? I need to get a book out there. There's something I need to share.
Two things. One, my wife told me I should do it. Second, though, was, so I read a lot of books and I write a lot of reviews about the books I read, and I publish a top 10 list every year, and I kind of advocate the books I really believe in. But one thing that people always do is they always ask me, hey, what book should I read in this situation? And one of the questions I never could answer was, hey, if I only can read one sales book, what should it be? I just couldn't pick one. And I've read at least 300 sales books over the last 8 years. And I couldn't pick a single book that said, if your situation, no matter your situation, this is the book you should read. It was always nuanced with, well, it depends. And so I decided to go about fixing that problem and write a book that anybody, no matter their situation in sales, if they said, hey, what's the one sales book I should read? I wanted to put that together.
Got it. Well, now I'm curious, what are some of your favorite sales books? If we could read 5 or 10 of them.
Oh, yeah, so many. So New Sales Simplified by Mike Weinberg, Inked by Jeb Blunt, The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need by Anthony Iannarino, The Challenger Sale, of course. There's a great book called Selling Above the Line. I really like that one. So yeah, those are some of the good ones that I really enjoy.
Cool. Now I'm going to ask you a question I like to ask salespeople. What's the real difference between sales and business development?
The title on your business card? No. So in lots of companies, business development is more strategy. So the bigger the company, like, so if you work for a company like Nike, business development is not sales at all, has nothing to do with sales. So it really depends on how your company defines it. But for lots of people, they use business development as another name for sales. So it's the same thing. In other companies, they say account executive or something like that, but it just means sales, right? Or new business development. It could be the same thing, but depending on your company, new business development might be nothing to do with sales. And it could be everything to do with new strategy for a new product line that's falls more under marketing than it does sales. So it just depends on the company. But most of the time, nothing.
So with your book, when you started writing it, who was the target audience? Was it the people who are always asking you, hey, what's the one sales book I should read? Or did you have a certain person in mind or certain type of person in mind as you were writing it?
So I do have a certain person in mind, and that's somebody who doesn't like to read. Most salespeople I talk to, at least in the last 15 years of my sales career, most salespeople I talk to, I'd say at least 70, 80% don't read sales books. They don't read books. So I wrote a book for somebody that doesn't like to read. And that's kind of how I structured it, how I created the formatting and all that kind of stuff. I made it so for the Twitter generation, right? For what we liked on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff, it's a short post. It's not, we don't like to read 3-4 pages of the same boring content. We want to read something quick and easy to understand, something we can apply right away. And so that was kind of the whole kind of exact profile of the person I was writing for is, hey, how is the shortest way to get this information to someone who doesn't want to be reading it actually?
Quick break here. Are you an entrepreneur? Do you want to write a book that will help you grow your business? Visit publishedauthor.com, where we have programs to fit every budget, programs that will help you write and publish your book in as little as 90 days, starting at just $39 per month. Or if you're too busy to write your book, we'll interview you and then write and publish your book for you. Don't let the valuable knowledge and experience you have go to waste. Head on over to publishedauthor.com to get the help you need to become a published author. You've already waited long enough. Do it today. Now, back to the show. So I have some experience with salespeople who don't like to read. He's listening to this right now thinking, yep, Josh is talking about me. But why is that? Do you think there's a reason why salespeople don't like to read, and what could salespeople gain if they did read more?
I think there's two reasons why salespeople, and myself included, don't read as much as we probably should. And one is time to value. Is if you read something, often you can't apply it that exact same day. And so then by the time you realize the benefits, it might be 6 months, a year down the road. So that's not necessarily advantageous. Salespeople are action oriented, so they want to do something that's going to give them value immediately.
It's like, what is this book going to do for me today?
Exactly. Not what it's going to do for me in my career 3 years from now, right? And that's what most sales books are, too theoretical that it takes a lot of time, right? The second thing, though, is a typical salesperson's personality. This is a stereotype, right? Not exact, but they're very action oriented, and so they don't have the attention span necessarily. So lots of salespeople have shorter attention spans because they're so focused on getting stuff done that they could train themselves to have longer attention spans, but they're so focused on shorter stuff that their attention spans don't allow them to sit through a 300-page sales book.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So now you are a sales guy, but you also love to read. We were saying before we started recording that you read 100 books every year.
Yeah.
So why do you read, and what have you gotten out of reading that's helped you with sales?
Why do I read? That's a great question. So I don't think I have enough. So I started reading professionally because I knew I didn't have enough experience to rely on my own experience. And I would travel a lot for work in my first job. Every week I was in a new city. And so I had lots of times on airplanes. And I remember all the senior sales guys that I looked to, I'm like, they have so much knowledge, so much experience, but I don't want to wait 10 years until I'm experienced. I was fresh out of college. I don't want to wait 10 years till I can say, oh, I've done this and this. So I had to find a way to learn from other people. And that's where reading nonfiction books came into my life. Before that, I loved reading fiction books, and I loved reading fantasy or novels or historical fiction. But it wasn't until after college in my first job that I started really getting into the world of nonfiction.
Got it. All right. So let's dive into your book then. How do you write a sales book for salespeople who don't like to read? What were some of the ways that you structured that book so that they would actually read this?
So each chapters no more than 2 pages. So no more than 2 pages. And then there's lots of white space, lots of font changes. So that way you can read the page. And if you just read the stuff that's bolded, you'll get enough of the information that you can understand what's in that chapter just by reading. And then supporting quotes from other voices and other authors. So there's 99 chapters and there's 99 quotes from different people that support what I wrote. So it's not just my voice, but it's somebody else's voice. And I think the different size fonts and the white space and the short content just makes it something where you don't have to read chapter 1 and then chapter 2. You could read chapter 37 and chapter 40 and then go back to chapter 18 and you won't miss anything.
Got it. And what's been the response so far? I mean, I know it's only been out for a little while, but what's some of the feedback that you're receiving from your target audience?
So what I really like, the feedback that I've gotten the best results from is sales leaders. They say, hey, this is something I can use kind of as a daily devotional where I can go train my sales force right away. So I might have a team of 5 salespeople and I'm getting kind of lost in what should I train them on every day? And I can outsource a lot of it, but some of it, when I want to do the training myself, what can I train them on? So that's been kind of interesting. My favorite review was somebody said, hey, it's a sales book. It's a philosophy book disguised as a sales book. Oh, that's pretty interesting. So it's a lot about mindset and about philosophy of how to treat someone the right way, but it's a sales book. So that was kind of my favorite review, actually.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get started on your book and when did you start writing it?
So I've been taking notes on the sales books I've been reading for the last 15 years. So you could say for 15 years, I've been writing the book, but I started really putting the thoughts together in 2019. And then when COVID hit, and I wasn't traveling as much for work anymore, I had a little more kind of time to just think about it. And that's when I decided to put it together.
And what was your process like? I mean, what was step 1? What was step 2 in getting the book down on paper?
So I first wrote, okay, if I was in sales, starting out my career in sales, that's kind of how I started. What would I need to know? What's the first thing I need to know? And so I wrote down a list and I just started brainstorming and I created a list of about 40 things that you have to know. And then it evolved from there. And then I say, okay, let's say I was in sales for 20 years. Like I've been almost 15 years in sales. What do I wish I would have known last week? What do I know this week that I wish I would have known last week? And then I wrote down 5 items there. And I just kept going through that process of putting myself in different people's shoes, different personas' shoes, and saying, what do I wish I knew or I need to know how to do? And then it evolved from there.
Got it. Was there any point during the process where you got bogged down or you ran into writer's block or you're like, I'm just done with this. I'm burned out. I don't know if I even want to finish it. Or how hard was it for you to get the book done?
So finishing the content was pretty simple, actually. The hard part was all the stuff after the book was finished when I just said, it's not worth it. I don't need to publish this. Not anybody's going to care about it. It's not going to do anything for me. I'm just going to let it be. And that was after I'd already finished writing the book. So the content was because I'm passionate about the topic and I believe in it. And I felt my knowledge was good enough. The content was the easy part. It was everything else that was a lot harder.
So what was it that got you through that? How did you overcome that?
I guess it's like with anything. If you're tied to an ultimate objective or a superior purpose, it kind of lets you set your daily goals, and then your daily goals turn into weekly actions that kind of end up producing results. And so I ended up having to reevaluate my goals and say, is publishing this book something that'll help a lot of people? If it is, then you should keep going. If it's not, then you won't. So I had to kind of question myself. And that happened a few times. I had to reevaluate, is this actually something I want to do? And once I decided, yes, it is, then the daily actions were a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you have any help along the way? Did you have a team that you built around you or just people to help you out through this process?
Yeah, I had a few people that I would bounce ideas off for sure. A couple of people I lived in Hong Kong with, actually, a couple of people that I went to high school with, and then a couple of my sales bosses that became my mentors over my career that I would ping ideas off of, bounce ideas from. And yeah, that was good. I really feel having a support system, not necessarily to tell you what to do, but just so you can get confirmation of your ideas from somebody else besides living in your own head all the time.
Just to be able to say, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think of this? And have them say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Or
no, that's a horrible idea, or yeah, whatever, keep going. And lots of the times the answer was whatever you think is best. And so it doesn't really help, but just saying it yourself made you express it in a new way to help you think about it in a different way.
Yeah. Well, and at least if they're saying whatever you think, that's different than, no, that's terrible. You should definitely not say that.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Now, you self-published the book, is that right?
I used Morgan James, which is a
Okay.
hybrid of
So
a
hybrid
hybrid.
publisher. Yeah.
It's a hybrid publisher, I would call it if I had to go through it. But yeah, I used
Yeah.
Morgan James.
Yeah. So we've had them on the show here too. So tell us what that experience was like working with them.
So the content is up to me, and that's kind of nice. And that's why I wanted to go with them. And then they helped with the physical distribution and the kind of the physical aspects of the book. Whereas the how the interior feel and layout was their job to produce it, but it was my job to kind of direct them and how I wanted it. So I actually took over the full interior creativity part of it. And the layout even was a layout on the cover was something I suggested. Whereas with their typical partners that they work with, the authors that they work with, they take full control over the cover design and the interior design. But because of the vision I had, I was able to ask for that part back, and they gave it back so I could kind of control that aspect. But they have tons of resources for first-time or any author, but first-time authors specifically. They have tons of resources and checklists and different tools to help an author say, hey, this is what you should be doing this week. This is what you should be doing next week. And so those checklists really helped me a lot.
That's great. They seem like a hybrid publisher that's really easy to work with.
Yeah, they want you to succeed, right? Because they succeed better when you succeed. And so, yeah, they do want you to succeed. And I like their model in that you don't actually pay them a cost like a typical hybrid. This is why I call them a hybrid of a hybrid, because most hybrids, you pay them a cost for the services they do. Whereas this is, no, you just have to commit to buying a certain amount of books. So it's a very different model because I'm going to use those books anyway. I was going to buy those books anyway. So it didn't matter if I bought them in one way or another. I was going to need those copies anyway. So the hybrid of a hybrid, it felt like there was real value in it, not just paying someone for their services. I actually paid them to do work that I ended up getting more value than I paid. I felt like I got more value in return than I paid for.
Oh, that's great. So how did you decide on the title? Let's talk about that long title. But first, let's talk about the short part of it.
Okay. So it came about in one main part was after everything was done and the content was done, the theme kept coming back that if salespeople would just stop being selfish and start caring for other people, everything would solve itself. If you're not an expert in a field, but you need to be an expert in a field, if you care enough, you'll become the expert. If you don't understand your client enough if you care enough, you'll be curious enough and you'll figure out a way to solve the problem. You don't have to know everything. You just have to care enough. And so that kind of became the theme after the book was over. I realized, wow, there's a huge theme in this book. And the title came about just because most salespeople think they're selling a product and that, hey, I'm doing this grandiose effort to help you, so you should care about it. But in the end, nobody cares about you or your product. And if you just cared enough about the person you're working with, you would realize that. And so it's not about them caring about you, it's you caring for them. And that's kind of the idea.
I really like the title because I'm working on my book, 7 Systems of Influence, and it's vision and genius zone and content and having an action plan. It's all these things, but then system number 7, I really struggled with. And I finally figured out that it's love, but love in the sense of goodwill, or like you said, caring. Really caring about people and wanting to help people. I mean, that's what System 7 is when I talk about love. And so when you talk about really caring people and how that solves all the other problems, it's exactly that aligns with the conclusion I've come to with my book, that if you've got love, or if you care, if you have goodwill, you'll figure out all the other stuff. It'll fall together. It'll fall into place. And people pick up on that. When they know that you care, then they trust you. I had somebody else on the show not too long ago. His name's escaping me, but it was his book was all about trust-based sales.
Okay.
And he was talking about how once people trust you, then they'll kind of buy anything from you because they trust you to give them something that they really need. They almost don't need to know the features or the details. It's just, hey, can I trust you? If I trust you, I know you're going to give me something good. And they trust you when they know that you really care about them and have their best interests in mind. So this is really resonating with me.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah. I love that love component because in the end of the day, if you care enough, you do, that love has to be a byproduct, or it could be the foundation. Like, it's, some people get it first, some people get it after, but either way, it's part of the equation, and you can't do anything without it.
So here's a question to put you on the spot. What if somebody doesn't really care? I mean, what if there's some salesperson out there and they're like, I don't know if I really do care about these people. Like, I care about making the money, but maybe they want to care, but they're not sure that they do care.
So you can be super successful without caring. There's tons of people that are. You can fake it. You can be very selfish. It's just, you're not going to be as successful as you could be. That's really what it comes down to. You're not going to be able to build that sustainable long-term success that would help you feel more fulfilled. So lots of people don't care and they're very successful, but imagine how much more successful they actually could be.
Mm-hmm. So how do I make the transition? I mean, let's say I'm listening to this, I'm a sales guy, and I'm like, well, I want to be more successful. So I want to care. How do I care? Where do I start?
So there's lots of things you can care about. So let's say you work for a company and you don't care about the product, and you never will. So while you're positioning yourself to transition to a product you do care about, you can care about the people that you're serving. And if you don't care about the people you're serving, and that's too hard of a step, you can still care about the results you're driving. So those are the three aspects of care. It's the product, the people, and the actual results or process, right? But if you start to care about one thing enough, eventually the other parts can kind of bleed over. But yeah, if you have a product you don't care about and will never care about, then it's time to think, oh, maybe I should make a change in my career and go somewhere else. And if you don't care about the people you're serving, you can either try to care about them or switch to a market where you do care about the people you're serving. So sometimes you have to make a switch.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So let's talk about the longer part of your book title there. How did you come up with that? I mean, this is a technical detail, but a lot of people are interested in this because people agonize over the subtitle to their book. They're like, I've got the title, it's the short little thing, but that part that comes after, I don't know exactly what to put in there. How did you go through that process of deciding this is what I'm going to have?
So I think it came from kind of my sales and marketing background, in that the people who are going to read this, what do they want to do, right? But in the end, everybody knows, like you talked about the trust, that you have to have trust to build sales. No sale is made without trust. And if it is, it gets canceled. So you need trust to build sales. And so that was kind of like the step. You need to have trust. And if you have trust, you can grow sales. And if you grow sales, you're going to increase your income. And at the end of the day, people either want to look good, feel good, or help others, right? And so look good and feel good can come from different ways, but lots of times that's tied to income and even help others. So if you can increase your income, that doesn't I'm not telling you what your goals are. I'm allowing you as a person to decide what your goals are and use your imagination. I'm just giving you the vehicle to get there, and that's a higher income. And people, that's one of the drivers people have, is to increase their income so they can either look good, feel good, or help others. And so that's kind of why those three elements were put in. And then the end of it, no matter what you sell or who you sell it to, was, hey, I don't want people to think this is a B2B book or a B2C book, or this is for first-time salespeople, or this is for complex sales. I wanted this to say, hey, this is for everybody, so there's no excuse. So erase the excuse to buy the book.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your book launch a bit. When we were chatting a little bit right around the time of your book launch, what are some of the tactics you engaged in, and what was your goal? What did you want to accomplish? Because some people say, oh, I want this to be a bestseller. Other people say, I want to just sell a ton of copies. Other people say, I just need to get these books in the hands of the right people, and maybe that's 100 people. Was there a specific goal that you had in mind as you were launching the book and starting to market it?
Yeah, I knew that I didn't have the influence, or you could say the platform, to drive huge amounts of sales. But the people that I do respect and that do actually like my work do. So I gave them copies of the book and I asked them to help me promote it, and they did. And so I was on different people's podcasts, and I got on lots of sales gurus email lists where they would email out the book to their subscriber lists of 100, 200,000 people, because they're established best-selling authors. And so that was kind of what I did to market. And the purpose was success by association, I guess you could say. If people see you hang around with successful people, they're going to assume you're successful. So by all these other people who are successful best-selling authors saying, hey, this is a good book, then my name now gets associated with those authors. And so in order to help people, I can help people. But then now that I'm associated, I can help more people. And so that's kind of was the driving purpose behind that and why I did that.
So it sounds like the success strategy was all around collaboration and working with others to get it out there.
For sure. Yeah. Especially since I have like lots of entrepreneurs, I'm doing lots of different things, and I have a full-time role where I didn't have the ability to spend 5 hours a day promoting this book. I had an hour a day to promote this book. So what can I do with the most effective amount of my time?
So now that you've written one book, some people, this is kind of like running a marathon. People run their first marathon, they reach the finish line and you say, never again, I will never do this again. And then 3 days later, you're like, yeah, maybe I'll do this again. With the book, do you feel like now that you've done it once, you're like, man, that wasn't that bad, I could write a bunch more? Or are you like, nah, one and done?
So as far as a sales book, I think I'm done. But I like the idea of eventually getting into a fiction book. I want to write a story, but it's still going to be kind of a philosophy book, kind of a parable maybe, but a shorter fiction book, something that's maybe 100 pages of actual content, something like that. And I also love the topic of leadership. That's what I studied in college. I got a master's in international business and global leadership. And so leadership is one of the things that I believe sales is leadership and leadership is sales. And if you master leadership, you're going to be a great salesperson. If you master sales, you're going to be great in leadership. If you actually care and you're good at sales, not just manipulating people and being selfish. So I think they go hand in hand, but lots of people don't see that. And so maybe I would like to write a book about that kind of topic too later in my career. Not now, but maybe after a few more exits.
Oh, interesting. What are some of your favorite leadership books?
Brave Leadership by Kimberly Davis is one of my favorites. I also love anything by Covey and the Arbinger. That my actual probably favorite is Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. That's probably my favorite leadership book.
It's a fantastic book. I remember opening that book and reading it for 5 minutes. And I was like, well, my life is ruined now. Now I can't go back. Like the things you learn in that book, it changes you in a way that you're like, I cannot not do these things. I have to do these things now, or I'm betraying myself. It's really an interesting book.
Yeah, every single time I get in a conversation with someone that's almost to the point where I'm trying to think they're wrong and I'm right, I'm like, oh, shoot. I'm totally off track here. I have to reposition, readjust on all those things, all because of that one book. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the box. I feel like I spent half my life in the box and I'm like, I'm in the box and I know I'm in the box. And how do I get out of this box?
I know, because sometimes you know you should get out, but you don't like it. You don't want to. You can't let something. Letting go is the harder part, right?
Yeah. No, that's a great one. And you mentioned this fiction book. So what would be the target audience or the purpose, the why behind writing that book?
Well, the first target is people that don't necessarily want to read anything nonfiction because they have a bias against. So I always go back to like books by Paulo Coelho or even John David Mann and Bob Berg, The Go-Giver. Those books connect with people that everybody has some type of job, whether you actually work outside the home or inside the home. Everybody does something, right, to help other people. And they don't want to read nonfiction often. Often they use reading to escape their real life, but anything that has lessons that can help them and they think about helps them become a better person. And so I want to reach a different target audience in that way.
Interesting. That's great. And it's a creative way of getting about delivering the message because you have the method, you have the impact you want to make, and you figured out the message you want to deliver. But then a lot of people would say, well, this is kind of a nonfiction topic, so I guess I have to write a nonfiction book. And you're coming at it from another angle saying, hey, maybe I can deliver this through fiction, but even though it's a topic that easily could be a nonfiction book.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Interesting. All right. So now that the book's out there, I'm curious, in your job, you're working for a small entrepreneurial company.
Yeah.
Has it impacted your career, your job in any way? Now that you're an author, do you feel like a changed person, a different person, or just life as usual?
It's a mixed bag. So on all my sales calls now, people bring up often, not every single one, but people that I've never met before. It's our first time having a conversation. They're like, oh, and you have that book out, right? So that's a conversation starter. We've started using it in some of our marketing material that we mail out to prospective partners is we just mail them a copy of my book. That's easy. So it's a trust builder right there. And then when it comes to hiring, though, it's been helpful too, because now I'm seen as an expert. And so, oh yeah, people want to work for an expert. So yeah, there's a few benefits for sure. And then in other ways, you go 2 or 3 days and forget that you've written a book. And then you don't even think about it for a few days because you're doing so many other things. But then when it comes back, oh yeah, I did write a book. Yeah.
I love that you bring up the recruiting aspect because it's true. People want to work with other successful people. And once you have a book, it's a badge of that success. It says something about who you are and what you're willing to do and what you've done. And people say, oh yeah, they're the expert. And of course, everybody wants to work with the expert. At least the people that you want to work with, that you want to hire, are people who want to work with the expert, right?
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
So I'm curious, you work with now, are you a co-founder in this business or?
I am a major shareholder, but no, I'm not one of the 2 co-founders.
Okay. But you have these co-founders. Have either of them written a book?
Nope.
Has this inspired them in any way? Or are they like, well, that's great for you. That's awesome. But
so one of them wants to write a book. He's been talking about it for a while and he has a plan, and yeah, he's pretty into that kind of stuff. So yeah, one of them wants to write a book. And it sounds
like they've been very supportive. I mean, if they're using it as marketing materials, then obviously they must like the fact that you wrote a book. Yeah.
They think anything that helps grow the company in any way is positive, right? They're very open-minded for lots of things. So.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Because I think there are a lot of employers out there who, if one of their employees came and said, hey, I want to write a book, they'd be like, well, yeah, as long as it doesn't interfere with what we're doing. I mean, there'd be skepticism perhaps. Yeah, it'd be like, well, are you planning on leaving? Are you going to start a new career? Like, what are you doing? Like, a lot of employers tend to have skepticism or be suspicious of somebody engaging in their own thought leadership. It's like, and yet I think there's this more visionary side of leadership to say, hey, if you're developing yourself and you're putting yourself out there, that's only going to be good for this business.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's the same people that ban their employees from posting on LinkedIn unless they approve it first. Yeah, same type of, it's that slippery slope of expression and self-development versus I need to control every single minute of my employees.
Yeah, we don't want our employees to become too successful because then they might leave, right? It's that whole fear. It's that whole quote about training, right? What if we train our employees and they leave? Well, what if we don't train them and they stay type thing, right?
Exactly.
Well, this has been great. Mario, do you have any other advice for entrepreneurs out there who are thinking about writing a book, but maybe they are just debating, should I do this? Should I not do this? What advice would you give to them if they're on the fence?
If you're on the fence, write the book. That's simple. But if you should think about the purpose of why you're writing the book, and then make sure you write a book that fulfills that purpose. If you're building a business based off the book, then make sure you can build a business off of the book. If you're not building a business off the book and you have a different purpose, just make sure the book you write fulfills whatever purpose you have. And sometimes there's a disconnect. But if you have a purpose, then it'll make writing the book a lot easier and it'll actually serve you in the long run, I think.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a great place to end things. Mario, thanks so much for being with us here today. Where's the best place for people to connect with you, learn more about you?
Probably LinkedIn. I'm the only Mario McCracken on LinkedIn, Mareo. And yeah, I'm the only one on LinkedIn. So you can probably find me there.
All right. We got to do a little bonus section for everybody here. You use LinkedIn a lot.
I do.
How has LinkedIn helped you in your career? Because I think a lot of people are skeptical of LinkedIn too. It's like, yeah, I have to be there, but you use it a ton. So how has it helped you? What do you do on it?
I do a lot of different things on it, but it's helped me professionally and personally in more ways than I can count. I do lots of my initial kind of sales and content marketing for awareness on LinkedIn with my company and my personal. And so they kind of combine where they see the professional stuff and then they see my personal stuff. So they get to know me as a person even before I make the first phone call. So when I make that first phone call, there's a good chance they've already come across something I've done because I use LinkedIn. And then at the same time, it's a way to help me overcome my ADD where every 50 minutes of work, I stop, take a break and go on LinkedIn for 10 minutes. And so I don't need to go run outside or go do something else. I can just take a mind shift break. And so then I spend after 10 minutes times 8, right? That's a little over an hour a day on LinkedIn, but it wasn't an hour straight, but then that helps me too. So it helps me in a lot of different ways. But as far as sales are concerned for growing a business, I don't think there's a better way to, at least when it's B2B sales and not necessarily to individuals, but when it's B2B sales, there's no better way to build brand awareness and create some initial level of trust than on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Mario, for being with us here today. Appreciate your time, and hope everybody enjoys this, especially those of you who are in sales. And go read Mario's book. If you only read one sales book in your life, go read Mario's book. Thanks, Mario, for being here.
Thanks, Josh. It was awesome.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to spread the word, please give us a 5-star rating review and tell your friends to subscribe too. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts. And if you're an entrepreneur interested in writing and publishing a nonfiction book to grow your business and make an impact, visit publishedauthor.com for show notes for this podcast and other free resources.